All right, so welcome back. One of the things that's kind of new for us, and one of the reasons why we're such happy members of the Autodesk family now, is that Autodesk is doing it right, in my opinion, because Autodesk provides all of you guys with personal education license to all of their apps for free, which is pretty great. So the boundary or the barrier between for the software is now non-existent, in my opinion. So I wanted to show you guys real fast where you could go to get the software. There's a couple things that you have to do, and there's a couple things that I want to make sure that you are aware of if you're downloading both Maya and Mudbox on your home PC or Mac. Okay. So to start the process, Mr. Irons, would you mind hitting just the first light over there on the door? Yeah. Thank you. Wonderful. So to start us off, I've just jumped open a web browser, and here we are at the Autodesk website, and it's really quite easy. It's just autodesk.com. Okay, nothing too magical in here. And take a look at this in earnest. Be familiar with what Autodesk does. I think a lot of folks don't know Autodesk for their media and entertainment apps. Okay, we're kind of insulated in a small little bubble, but you step out of these classrooms, Autodesk is no more for AutoCAD and Revit than they are for Maya and Max and Mudbox. Okay, Autodesk owns the engineering world. If you're building a skyscraper or constructing a bridge, 9.9 times out of 10 you're using an Autodesk product to do that. Okay, shoot, they have an entire skyscraper down in San Francisco, an entire pier. This is not only a Fortune 500 company, it's probably the top 3 software developer in the world. Okay, so this is a huge company that we are now interfacing with. Okay, so get familiar with what they offer. There's a lot of really great products that Autodesk develops. I think we're lucky in the sense that that the Autodesk ecosystem is very active and very deep. Maya goes all the way back to the beginning. It's one of the first 3D modeling applications out there. Shoot, I mean, I've been using Maya professionally since college. Okay, so that was almost 20 years ago for me. Okay, it's been around for a long time. Even though I've been teaching, a lot of folks don't realize this because I guess I never really had a reason to tell you guys. But for a while, this was not the only school that I was teaching at. I taught down at UC Davis. I taught down at the Art Institute. And all of those classes were Maya classes. So Maya is a pretty big influence inside of our world. And it's a big app, an app that I know you guys are really going to enjoy kind of getting to know. To download the student license instead of Maya, the first thing that you need to do is create a student account. And it's all free, but it's kind of buried inside of this menu icon in the upper right-hand corner. You don't have to do this now, but when you go home tonight, certainly check it out. There it is. Students and educators. Don't do free trials, that's something else, right? We want students and educators. We get our own landing page inside the Autodesk website. And here, just follow the directions, okay? I think those directions, oops, I'm sorry. Free software. You start here on the free software, and then here are the directions. Step to download, okay? So you gotta select your chosen product, you gotta sign in or create an account. It is free. You can use whatever email address that you'd like. And then you have to select the version and the operating system that you want to install. I believe Autodesk is also going to provide you with an email that includes kind of an activation, if you will. So please check your email once you download and start the installation process at home. Oops, I apologize. So here we are. Here's Maya. Okay. Now I'm not going to sign in, but this is something that I want to make sure that you guys are aware of. Okay. You have to select the right operating system, and you have to select the right version. We're going to be using Maya 2018, okay? The most recent, I don't remember what service pack we're on, but Maya 2018, and then Mudbox 2018, okay? And then specifically for Mudbox 2018.2, which is the most, actually in all honesty, we got a Christmas present over the holiday from Autodesk. They released Autodesk Maya and Mudbox 2019. But we're going to be on 2018. Question, Levi.
I was actually going to ask, I downloaded 2019, does that matter?
It matters. Go back. You can download 2018. And you can,
I can. I'm just wondering.
Great. And you're going to have multiple versions of the same app living on your computer at once. I think I have 2017 and 2018 on this laptop right here, and they both live together quite wonderfully. Okay.
Can you be more specific on why it matters?
Sorry, say again?
Can you be more specific on why it matters?
We're in 2018 in here. Okay. Bingo. So if you were to create a file in 2019 and bring it here to campus, you're not going to be able to open it. Or there's a very high likelihood that something's not going to work. It's going to be corrupted. I've seen it very many times before.
What if I make a file here and try to open it in 2019?
Everything is forward compatible. Everything is forward. It's not backwards. Yeah. Once you save in the higher version, you're locked in that version.
That's only if you save it as Maya's inside file, but like if you export it as an FBX, though.
Then it doesn't matter. Yeah, if you're saving out an OBJ or an FBX, it doesn't matter at that point. Yep. I think, well, I don't know if 2019 has been released to education yet. It has? Okay.
I got it.
Great, yeah. So we're using 2018. When we were installing all this over the holiday, I remember saying to our computer services guy, oh yeah, Autodesk never releases things until like Game Developers Conference, because they asked, like, so when's the next version of Maya coming out? I was like, yeah, it's going to be a while, right? And then, open mouth, insert foot, like literally a week and a half later, I get this email saying, hey, 2019's released. And I went, son of a gun. All right. So please, there's no reason not to sign up. It is honestly free, okay? And you can't get better than that. In addition, it's also free for us too, which is pretty great. We had to pay a pretty big chunk of change for our subscription to Modo, and now that is being completely removed from our institutional line item budget, which I'm very thankful for. So we're happy to be Autodesk partners on a number of different levels. All right.
Are you going to get them to use that money to build some bulky rendering computers?
No.
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 I'm sure that money's not even coming.
No, yeah, it's, I wish that is the way it worked, where they say, oh, hey, Pat, you have this huge chunk of change that's now unused. Make sure you use it, right? That's not, unfortunately, how our system works. Unfortunately, that's not how our system works. That'd be great, because I would buy all sorts of stuff if I had access to that money for you guys, obviously. All right, so let's jump in and start looking at Maya. To get us started working with Maya and just getting comfortable, there's a couple little project files that I would like you to download from the week 1 module inside of Canvas. They're way down here at the bottom inside the lab assignments. If you're taking GCOM 402, this shape sorter lab assignment is going to be very familiar, but it really is a nice, fast way of getting up and running with the Maya selection and system. So we're going to come back to this here in a minute, but we also have this 3D axis overview and the teapot project file. I think I'm going to start with the 3D axis overview. I've already downloaded it, and let's jump in. So Maya should be down in here in your dock. Please make sure you're launching Maya, not Mudbox. Literally the only difference, in my opinion, is the word down there. The icons are a little too similar. So let's just launch Maya. Maya is a beast of an application. It honestly takes a good minute or so to launch, okay? So be patient with it. It's not like some of the other 3D apps where you double click on your project file and then you're up and running in seconds, right? It honestly takes some time to launch and get ready, for it to use. So just give it some love, right? Give it some love. Usually whenever I see the application launch, I just give it a couple beats, because there are a lot of plugins and extensions that Maya's loading in the background. Okay. Oops, this is me. So it says, please locate the RenderMin Pro server. Pixar was very kind enough to donate a whole series of licenses for RenderMin for us. So we're trying to get that up and running, and I forgot to disable the plugin before we get started. Okay, so welcome to Maya. It looks and behaves very, very different from a lot of the other 3D apps out there, but it doesn't take too much to get up and running with it. There are a lot of commonalities between Maya and the other 3D apps inside of our ecosystem. The one thing that I'm going to encourage you to ignore is your experience in Modo. Is you can't bend Maya to be Modo. So don't try. Just take out your Modo brain. Like I said earlier, thank it, give it some love, and then kick to the curb, right? Because that's done. Yeah.
Can we use the shortcuts from Moto if we want to go in and change them all?
Yes, at home. You're more than welcome to change all the key bindings at home. Yeah. I would encourage you to not do that, though.
Since they're not going to be like that here.
They're in any other place on the face of the planet. Yeah. It's a weird transition. I've had to do it myself, right? It's almost like exercising the demons, right? It's like you have to give yourself an opportunity to, have your brain retarget all these neurons, and it's tough. Trust me, it really is. Okay. I feel your pain. Let me open up that project file that I was just looking at real fast. So File, Open Scene. It's just sitting here on my desktop, and 3D Axis Overview. Okay. All right. So let's just take a tour real fast of what Maya is all about. In many installations, this is how Maya is going to look when you first launch. And there's a lot going on. If earlier during the break, I don't remember who I sent it to, but Maya is a deep, and I mean deep app, okay? If, a nice comparison was Moto was like, I said the kiddie pool, and that's not fair because Moto actually is a pretty great app. Moto is like the Great Lakes, okay? It's a pretty big body of water, right? Maya is like the Pacific Ocean, okay? It is deep, okay? There's a lot going on underneath the hood when it comes to Maya. And a lot of those bells and whistles and the complexity of the app is quickly seen inside the interface itself. Unfortunately, from my experience, the interface is going to be your biggest barrier when overcoming the challenges inside of Maya. Maya is built for engineers by engineers, okay? And they've built such a wonderful application that us artists have kind of picked it up as well. If you're artistically bent like I am, Maya is going to feel, it's going to be foreign to you. It's going to be challenging, okay? But there are some really easy ways for us to continue to work around the interface, okay? First and foremost, let's just talk about the viewport, because this is where we're going to be spending 90% of our time, just like we were over in Maya or in Cinema 4D and Max, okay? So we have a whole new series of viewport navigation commands that we need to be ninjas of when we're working here inside of Maya. So the tumble, the orbit command, okay? Hold down the Option key on your keyboard. Before I go any further, and I apologize, I got a little ahead of myself. The one thing that you have to have for Maya is this thing. Have to have a traditional 3-button mouse. The entire application is built around a 3-button mouse. It's not going to work with a trackpad. Fundamentally not going to work with a trackpad. So for the individuals that have laptops in here, you need to bring a 3-button mouse. It's also not going to work. Yeah, it's just not going to work. In addition, it's not going to work with a stylus. So unfortunately, and the whole app is built around this mouse input. So you have to have a classic 3-button mouse, okay? All you need is a 3-button. You don't need to have like I was at Best Buy the other day. I saw like a 15-button mouse, and I went, where is the $8 mouse from Logitech? Because that's all I really need, right? Yeah, exactly. That will work as long as it has a 3rd button. That's the only a clickable 3rd button. Okay, because when you're orbiting around the interface, as I just mentioned a second ago, if you hold down the Option key and the left mouse button, you're going to do an orbit, right? Okay, that's orbit. Rotating around our scene. Option middle mouse button, and this is why we got to have that middle mouse button. Is the pan, the left, right. Up and down, okay? That's the pan. Middle mouse, Option middle mouse. And then, as you'd imagine, Option right mouse button is the zoom in and zoom out.
Can you remount the pan to another mouse button or no?
Yes, you can completely customize the entire set of key bindings for Maya. I'm gonna let you explore that on your own. I really can't recommend that we do that here. That just turns into the wild, wild west. But for your home PC, go crazy with it, okay? There are global system preferences where you can change that. However, I really would recommend not doing that, right? And here's why. If you were to get a job, and you're a smart guy, so I know you're going to get a job in this industry, right? the first place you're going to go is a studio where those key bindings are not mapped, right? You're going to basically be fighting against the defaults every single time you go to a new desk, right? So it's best just to know them, know the defaults, and then go from there. All right, so the Option key with left, middle, and right mouse button is really our primary navigation system for working inside the 3D interface. So it's just one button on your keyboard, and then the mouse is really the driver of this, which is the opposite from the Moto world, right? Where we basically had one button, and then we changed our keyboard bindings, or our keyboard, the keys that we press, our key presses, excuse me, to navigate in and around our viewport, okay? The other thing that is going to be a challenge for you, especially if you're coming from Moto, is the space bar, okay? The space bar was a central tenet for us inside of Moto. It really was. That's how we dropped our tools. I mean, it's just, you were hitting the space bar often inside of Maya, right? The space bar inside of, you were using the space bar often in Moto. Inside of Maya, the space bar has a completely different function. So kind of get out of the habit of tapping that space bar, and it's going to be a hard habit to break. I can't tell you how many times in Maya recently I've been doing a whole lot of 3D modeling, and I've tapped the space bar to drop the tool, and that just changes my viewport, and I go, oh, okay, I gotta relearn how to think, okay? So tapping the space bar inside of Maya is gonna change your display, okay? Now, if you look carefully here, my display goes from our 3D viewport and the outliner, which is kind of our global list view. It's our item list, okay? And if I tap the space bar, that goes away. These buttons over on the left-hand side of the interface allows us to change kind of our display properties, if you will, how our display is going to be organized, okay? You just have a single heads-up display, okay, which is what I have at the moment, okay? You can do a quad view, and then check it out. I can go from a quad view, and then my mouse cursor is up in here. Tap the space bar, that goes full screen. Tap the space bar again, I'm back on my quad view, okay? If I click in this bottom one, which is the side -X, okay? I've clicked in it. It's kind of hard to see, but the moment you click in one of these viewports, see how there's a small gray highlight running around each one of these viewports? That denotes the active viewport. So if I was to hit the space bar, now that viewport comes full screen, okay? So the space bar inside of Maya, in every sense, is going to be really tied to changing our display, okay? That's going to be a difficult thing to kind of get past, I know from direct personal experience, okay? Because you will instinctually hit the space bar and like, oh, I'm looking at the top of my scene now. I didn't mean to do that, right? Okay, let me go back into my perspective view, and we get to work, okay? So inside of Maya, our viewport has a big role for us, okay? As it does in all 3D apps, okay? Of course, naturally, we can zoom out and look at our scene. We have our lovely grid down here. One of the other very stark differences between the 3D viewport in Moto in comparison to what we have here in Maya is how can I say this, is how unimportant the grid is, okay? Maya is almost a unitless system. At the core of Moto was almost a CAD engine, right? Where it understood units and measurements and distance and physical properties better than every single 3D app on the face of the planet, in my opinion. Maya is all unitless. The origin continues to be the one consistent point inside of our scene, which is why they do an excellent job of communicating the origin for us, okay? Of course, it continues to be right there. But we're not going to see coordinates, okay? We're not going to see distances like we saw inside of the Moto ecosystem. It's all unitless. Now, I think I may have overstepped a little bit. That accuracy is still inside of Maya. We can start to calculate volumes and areas and distances from one another, but it's not as foreground as it was over in Moto, okay? So the grid doesn't have as much of a role inside of our 3D modeling work plane, nor do we have the work plane inside of Maya. That is a Moto property, okay? That is a Moto invention. It's a wonderful invention, but that is something that's completely absent here inside of the Autodesk ecosystem. Our coordinate plane is still the same, which is why I started with the 3D axis overview. So if you have a really good understanding of the role of the X, the Y, and the Z axis, that's consistent, okay? I've spent some time in Blender, because Blender just came out with a new version. Are you guys familiar with Blender? Yeah, Blender's a really cool app. It's an open source 3D modeling and animation package. It's actually really neat, okay? And they just came out with a new version that just kind of like blew my mind. It's just some good technology. It's developed by these wonderful computer scientists all around the world that basically donate their time to the Blender Foundation to create an open source free 3D modeling and animation app, and it's neat. However, the barrier for me is that they use a right-handed Cartesian grid system, right? So instead of Y being up and down, guess what represents up and down inside of Blender? Z, which is that's like driving on the right-hand side of the road, going to driving on the left-hand side of the road. My brain was like, I can't deal with this. Y is up and down, not Z and up and down. So our role of the role of the XYZ axis here in Maya is the same as it is in other places. That's why I bring it to your attention. I apologize for the colors getting mistargeted. That's just a mistargeted material that is shading each one of these axis indicators incorrectly. So ignore these big colors here. If you're looking at your 3D compass down in the lower left-hand corner of your viewport, it's very clearly it's the same as it was over in Modo. X is represented by red, Y is green, and Z is blue, as it always has been, which is kind of nice. Okay. All right. I wish. That's a good job. We have something similar to that here in a minute.
I have a question. So back in my old university, when we used to submit projects, we had to submit the whole project file. Or not, we would lose the textures and everything and the UV mapping and everything. So just submitting the MD file would make you have everything lost, but you have to set a project and create a project file.
We're going to get to that in a minute.
Perfect.
Probably not today, but we are going to get to. It's critical, and it's one of the big differences between working in Maya and Modo. You actually had that functionality in Modo, but the app didn't really require it. Here in Maya, it's a critical component. Yeah. This one, it's explicit.
When you do something on After Effects and you don't have the file in the same place, and it just
Yep. Yeah, we'll talk about that in the future. Yep, as we get a little bit more in. Once we start actually adding textures, we'll start looking at the project directory for Maya, for sure. Okay. All right. Other interface things just to talk about real fast. There's a lot going on outside of our viewport. Our viewports are pretty consistent, easy things for us to manage, but we start kind of taking a step back away from the viewport, and man, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? And I mean a lot of stuff going on. I mean, shoot, just look up here at the top of the screen and you'll see pretty quickly what I'm talking about. If you thought the tabs over in Modo were complex, you know, here we have a whole, these are called shelves, okay? And you can start to see the complexity and the depth of the system inside of Maya by just looking at what's available to us inside of all of these shelves, okay? I mean, it just kind of keeps going and going. I mean, it's intense, right? These shelves are going to be a lot to manage. For us in this class, we're going to be hanging out in just a couple of them, okay? I encourage you to look at these different shelves to kind of get a good understanding of what this app is able to do. For the most part, we're going to be hanging out in polymodeling, okay? This curves and surfaces brings up a new surface type here in Maya that we fundamentally did not have over in Modo, and most applications don't have them. They're called NURBs. Yes, you heard me say that right. A NURB surface, okay? I'll write it on the board so everyone is very clear as to what in the world I'm saying, okay? It's actually an acronym. NURB surfaces have been around for a long, long time, okay? They're one of the things that makes Maya unique, okay? A NURB surface, right? It's pretty nerdy, this whole NURB surface thing. It's a bad joke, I had to do it, all right? But a NURB surface is actually an acronym. It stands for Non-Uniform Rational B-Spline, okay? If Photoshop is all pixel-based, right, what is Illustrator? Vector base, okay? If a polygonal surface is like a rasterized bitmap that you see over in Photoshop, a NURB surface is a vector 3D model, okay? It's resolution independent. There are no actual polygons that we select and that we build inside of Maya. You'll never see a faceted edge with a NURB surface, okay? These are stupid hard to create, manage, and use, which is why we don't see them anywhere else except Maya. But that's what this shelf is really dedicated to exploring, is how to create and edit a NURB surface. Yeah?
What do people generally use NURBS for?
If you're staying in Maya, use NURBS. Okay? Hard surface stuff is a great example of where NURB surfaces are usually kind of placed. Because now we can create these wonderful radiuses that don't have any sort of faceted edges. Everything is going to look like a subdivision surface model, if you will. They're really hard to control and create and manage. But I've seen some wicked cool examples with NURBS. However, in order to render it, okay, everything's going to get bumped down into a polygonal shape at one point. So anyway, okay. So I bring this to your attention because a lot of folks, they see curves, they go, oh, cool, and then they look down, get out of the way. They look down here and they go, oh, cool. This is where I go to make a donut, right? And then start making a donut, and it's really small. Let's hit the F key. And they go, cool, look at my donut, this is rad, I can scale it, I can do whatever I need to do, and man, it looks really, really good, okay? But then they try to select the polygon, they go, what? Why can't I select a face, or how come I can't select an edge? Because this doesn't have polygons on it. A NURB surface is a vector shape, if you will, inside of Maya. All right. The F key, by the way, just like Unity, frames your scene in the viewport. In Modo, it was the A key for auto fit. Here in Maya, it's the F key for frame or for fit. Okay. So where we're going to be hanging out primarily is this poly modeling tab. Now these are all of our traditional, polygonal modeling shapes and our traditional polygonal modeling edit tools. These over here are our edit tools, and there are a bunch of them. One of the challenges that you're going to find working inside of the Maya interface is that the icons don't have names associated with them. So you kind of have to understand what the icon is to understand what tool it is that you're firing off. However, this takes us to the pull-down menus at the top of the screen. Because after a while, once you become a ninja with the editing tools inside of Maya, these will make sense, and you'll know which ones are responsible for doing X, Y, and Z inside of our space. Until that point, you're going to be really leveraging all of these pull-down menus at the top of the scene, okay? Which brings up the first major landmine that's going to blow up in your face, okay? These menus up at the top of the screen change based off of a very specific property right there. Oops, get out of the way. This thing, okay? That part of your interface is going to change the menus at the top of your screen. Check it out real fast. Explore this for a second. I'm in the modeling section, but if I was to go into my rigging tools, okay, bloop, check it out. All the menus at the top of the screen change. Okay, if I go into rendering, they change. Okay, if I go into FX, they change. Okay, this is a landmine. This is a danger spot for us, because sometimes the person that was sitting at Maya before you over in the design lab, they could have changed that to animation, and you're coming in into doing 3D modeling, and you're going to go, where are all my mesh editing tools, right? Look there first, okay? This is the first thing that you need to check over here, okay? Modeling. For almost everything that we're going to be doing in this class, we're going to be in this space, in that modeling menu, okay? In addition, in the most recent versions of Maya, they've created a workspace environment similar to what we're used to seeing over in some of the Adobe apps, and this is new and it's welcomed. Because one of the things that you're going to find working in Maya is that it's a bloated interface. There are pop-up menus upon pop-up menus upon pop-up menus, and you can get lost pretty quickly. So they've created these workspaces to help kind of funnel us through to different workflows. Okay? So you have the classic, which is what we're in now, but there's also a really great modeling standard workspace that starts to get rid of the timeline and some of the shelves that you see downstairs. It's just a really great way to kind of start condensing and distilling the interface into some workflows. So be mindful of this as well. I'm running a couple animation classes this semester, so they may be in the animation workspace, which looks radically different, okay, than the modeling workspace, okay. So there's really two areas of the interface that you need to do a good double check before you sit down and start working. The pull-down menus, the option that changes the contents of our pull-down menus over here. I'm going to put that back to modeling, and then also do a good double check on your workspace. And I'm going to put this back to modeling standard. Modeling standard and Maya Classic are very similar. They're not too different from one another. In Maya Standard, or excuse me, Maya Classic, you actually had the timeline down there for animation and what have you. So this kind of really focuses the app on our modeling workflow. All right. Interface stuff is boring, so let's talk about selection. And I'm going to travel back over to my desktop and open up my teapot model, because all good demonstrations begin and end with the University of Utah teapot. Okay? It's important that we talk about selecting, because here inside of Maya, our selection engine is wild and wacky and completely different than what we're used to seeing over in Modo. And it's important that we step through this system. If you're coming from some experience in the 3D modeling world, especially if you took GCOM 402 with me last semester, we have to translate some vocab. Inside of Modo, what was the top level thing that we would select in our item list? Where did all of our geometry live in Modo? On what thing? On a mesh specifically? What was it called? Mesh item, okay? In Modo, we were all item-based, right? We had mesh item, camera items, light items, okay? So this is the Modo terminology. Well, now that we're going to Maya, our vocab has to change a little bit, okay? In Maya, we fundamentally have the exact same thing, right? Its terminology or name is different. Does anyone know what it's called here in Maya? Not asset, unfortunately. Object. You got it. Okay? In Modo is an item. Here in Maya, it's an object. It's the exact same thing. Okay? Exact same thing. It's the top tier item inside of our hierarchy. Okay? Now selecting, and of course we still have vertices, edges, and faces as they're called here in Maya. They're not called polygons, but they're the same thing. It's a polygon, but they call them faces, right? There's a couple things that I'm going to change here. I'm inside a tab called the Modeling Toolkit. If you don't see this, if I'm in the Modeling Standard workspace, Modeling Toolkit, if you don't see this tab, click on the little hammer icon right there, and it'll pop in this guy. That brings to the surface the Modeling Toolkit. In the first line of our Modeling Toolkit are all the selection states that we can turn Maya into, right? In the first one, the filled-in 3D cube, this is object mode, okay? When that's depressed in the keyboard shortcuts, the function keys, by the way, another thing that's going to take a while for you to transfer over into. We're not hitting 1, 2, and 3 or tapping the space bar to cycle through all of our selection states. Now we have to use the function keys, okay? So F8 allows us to select our objects. We're clicking on that button. And it just dawned on me that for some folks, okay, F8 for me gets me in, okay? If F8 for you is like putting the play pause button on your screen, is that happening with anyone? Yeah, okay, I can see some people raising their hands. They're hitting F8. I see iTunes launching on someone's machine. This is a problem for us, okay? Because I love Apple products, but for whatever reason, Apple decided that the function keys are not used in common everyday use, and maybe they're right. But for us in the 3D industry, the function keys are absolutely they're critically important, right? So if you want to fix this, It's really easy, okay? If you want to return the function keys to their functionality, go into your global Macintosh system preferences, okay? And once this launches, you're going into the keyboard preference pane right there. And then it's down here at the bottom. I've already enabled it on mine. And just make sure that use F1, 2, etc. as standard function keys is turned on, is enabled. So you go down to your global system preferences in your dock, right here. And then in the keyboard section, right there. And then just turn on, use F1, 2 as standard function keys. All right. Because F8 is going to allow us to select, objects, okay? And for us, it's just left-clicking on it, okay? We can left-click on an object instead of our three-dimensional view, and we're going to be able to go in and grab it, okay? When, luckily for us, we get a nice little bit of feedback from Maya that tells us that we have an object selected because the wireframes go green. So keep that in mind. If you see green wireframes, you're in object mode. You're selecting the totality of that object, not the individual component pieces, okay? So F8 gets us into object selection mode. F9 allows us to select all of our verts. If we keep going, F10 is edges, okay? Oops, and then I hit, what did I do? Oh, golly. And then, okay. So what's happening on my machine is that someone has paired my F11 key to show the desktop of my computer, which is really frustrating. So I got to fix that. But F11 allows us to go in and select our faces. This entire system is mirrored over here inside of our modeling toolkit. Are we all doing the exact same thing? Okay. I don't remember off the top of my head how to turn that functionality off, but I will find it maybe during a break. Okay, because that's is under what? Shortcuts. We'll come back to that. Thank you for finding that for me. We'll come back to it. Just as a reminder, this changes our selection sets over here as well. Okay, I find myself hitting these in here probably more often than I do hitting the keyboard shortcuts. That's just how I work. So objects, verts, edges, faces, and this is actually UVs. And you're going to find that as you get a little bit more experience working in Maya, UVs are displayed and selected and handled much differently inside of Maya than they were over in Modo. We'll cross that bridge and have that conversation in about a month. Okay, but these are all of the selection states inside of Maya. That entire system is basically mirrored up here. Okay, object mode. Okay, and then this is component selection mode. Okay, so if you want a fast way to switch back and forth between them, object mode, component selection mode, and then you have to tell the computer specifically which components you want to select by a keyboard shortcut. Okay, all right, so object mode, everything's green, and I click on this button again. Now I'm selecting verts, and I can grab edges. So a couple different ways of changing your selection state inside of Maya. Okay. All right, I'm going to go into this button, which is going to do what? What is this going to allow me to do? Select faces. And let's just actually physically go in and start looking at how the selection engine works inside of Maya, because it's fundamentally different. And there's a couple different things in here that I want to show you guys. Okay? First and foremost, everything is driven by the left mouse button. Okay? I hate this about Maya. The selection color is kind of like, what would you call that? Orange, maybe a salmon perhaps, but it's very faint, it's very light, okay? So for us in this space, it's going to be a little bit difficult at times to see what I've selected on the projector because it's just kind of a very faint color. But you get some good rollover feedback as to what you have selected, just like we did over in Modo. Now, of course, as one might imagine, I can hold down the control key and subtract components from an existing selection, which is pretty great. However, I want you to pay really close attention to the colors that are showing up underneath my mouse cursor. What do you think red represents? Say again? It's not selected, but even if I have the shift key, even if I let go of the shift key, see how it's red? What does red kind of represent? Play around with it for a second. What?
Stop.
Not even stop, right? Kinda. Yeah, red represents add inside of Maya. You're going to add something to a selection or create a new selection, right? See how it's got that red highlight there? So I hold down the shift key, I can add to that, okay? But check it out. So I got these 4 polygons selected here, right? But now my cursor's green. Huh. And you're going to see the green a lot, okay? Now, I'm still holding down the shift key, not holding down the control key like we saw over Moto. What's happening? It's gone green, right? I get a minus sign, and I can subtract. Okay, this is a big difference to the Moto selection system, is that I can add. I'm just holding down the shift key right now. The shift key is a selection modifier. It's not like add pixels or subtract pixels like we have over in Photoshop or in Moto for that matter. It's just a selection modifier, okay? If I hold down the shift key and hover over a component piece that's already selected, I now can deselect just that individual component simply by clicking on it. Larger point being, pay very close attention to the color of that selection highlight, okay? The rollover highlight. If it's red, that means you're going to add that selection to an existing selection or create a new selection. But if it's green, and I hold down the shift key, it's going to subtract it. Okay? This takes a little getting used to, okay, because it is kind of a big difference between the selection engines. Okay? Okay. Here's one that I wish Moto has a paint selection engine. It's one of the things I loved, or excuse me, Maya has a paint selection engine. And this is my cross to bear over the next probably 8 weeks. I'm coming from an app whose name started with M, going to a new app whose name starts with M. I'm going to mix them up, and for that I apologize, okay? Moto had a great paint selection engine. We left-clicked and dragged on our surface, and wherever our mouse ran over, Moto would select those things for us. And it was fantastic. It was one of the things that I honestly really enjoyed, right? Maya also has a paint selection engine, right? There's 2 ways that we can turn this paint selection engine on, okay? This is our selection tool, okay? Then we have the marquee selection tool, which will create these really weird lasso shapes, okay? And then this is the paint selection engine, right, which uses a radius, a brush radius, okay, to select some polygons, okay? And I think if I remember correctly, holding down the B key, B as in boy, okay? And left-clicking and dragging will change the diameter of our brush, okay? Some people like this engine. I do not, right? I find it incredibly frustrating, and I had to come, up until about a month ago, I was forced to come over here and hit that button to get into the paint selection engine. This is the best selection tool, in my opinion, right? Check it out. There's a keyboard shortcut that I hope everyone writes down or at least commits to memory because it's changed my workflow. This is cool, but maybe I just want to drag on all of these polygons up in here to select them. I can't necessarily do that, or maybe I just want to drag on, an interesting shape. I only have this bounding box, right? So to toggle the paint selection engine inside of Maya, hold down the tab key. If you hold down the tab key, now I can just kind of click and drag, and I'll select whatever is underneath my cursor. And it doesn't matter how big the brush diameter is, it's just going to select what's under your cursor. The tab key. That's a great one. I love the tab key. Tab key and me are like best friends. Okay. One other thing, and then we're going to move on. Okay, I'll let you guys start working on your lab. All right. So inside of Maya, we have this marquee selection engine. So I'm just kind of left-clicking and dragging out a big box. And you can see that whatever is inside that box is going to be selected. Okay? Looks as though I've selected just the front face of my teapot. However, if I go, I've selected all the way through. This is the default behavior inside of Maya, to select through your mesh, and whatever's in that marquee selection box is going to get selected. Okay? Sometimes that's not what you want. I actually happen to like the opposite of that, in my opinion. I only want to select the stuff that's in front. Okay? So I've just dragged out a box. I've selected all those polygons, but I have also selected all the polygons on the back of my teapot as well. I want to turn this functionality off. This is called camera-based selection. The default is for it to be off, this entire engine. Now, watch how the functionality of our selection engine changes when I turn it on. So I click on the little arrow, hit on. Now, I'm going to do fundamentally the exact same thing. I'm going to left-click and drag out a selection box in the middle of my teapot, and I grab all of those guys, okay, the ones that are facing the camera, but the ones on the back of the mesh were not selected. Okay? Camera-based selections. Okay? That's another good one. So with it off, it's just going to select through the mesh, which at times is really handy, right?
Is there an option to change the color of the marquee or box selection so it's
Ooh.
almost invisible?
I hope that there is. I don't know off the top of my head. It is very difficult to see. Especially on these high-resolution displays, it's very difficult to see that little white box, especially when you're on top of a model. I hear you. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm always scared of auto, and I think I'm kind of old school. Like auto seems like it's on to me, so I don't know when it evaluates and turns it back on. Okay, so I'm going to leave my camera-based selection on so that I don't select through the mesh. Okay. I can select and go crazy. Okay? All right. Maya works off of the exact same principle that Modo works off of, in the sense that if something is selected, it's going to be changed. If nothing is selected, everything's going to be changed. Okay? Our teapot here is similar to, to other apps. Okay? If I double-click on the spout, you can see that's one contiguous polygon. Firing off the Move tool, which is the W key, will allow me to move it. My teapot's really made up of 3 different pieces here. So I can select one piece and move it. Oops, I just hit the space bar to drop the Move tool. See? It's going to take a while, even for me. Okay? All right. We're going to come back to that. Hang on like 10 seconds. Okay. So if I was with nothing selected and fired off the Move tool, something selected, or I'm not, oh, there it goes. It has to have, I'm in component mode, so there's nothing to select or nothing to move, okay? But if I was in object mode, then I could just select it, fire off the Move tool, and we're on our way, okay? Now to answer Dominic's question about dropping tools, okay? The selection tool is a tool. In Modo, the selection tool really wasn't something that we focused too much on, right? It was just kind of this engine that was always on, right? You never really could turn it off. Here in Maya, it's actually a tool itself. In the Move tool, for example, let me go back into my faces. If I have these things selected, and I fire off the Move tool, which is the W key, by the way, move, rotate, scale. Check it out. The Move tool is on, I can move those faces. If I was to make another selection, the Move tool is still on, right? So a great way to turn off a tool is to turn on the selection tool, whose keyboard shortcut is Q. Q is in Quebec. Okay? That way you can go back to selecting some stuff, fire off the scale tool, make that bigger or smaller. Because you can still select stuff while a tool is on. See how I got the scale tool active, and I can still select some stuff? Okay? This gets dangerous really fast, because you can accidentally move, rotate, and scale something unintentionally. So I always go back to the Q tool, or the selection tool, whose keyboard shortcut is Q, at the end of every modeling operation. All right, so these are our global tools that apply to every single viewport and every single part of our 3D experience here inside of Maya. These are the selection tools up at the top. This is move, rotate, and scale. Keyboard shortcuts are the same as they are in every app. W is move, E is rotate, R is scale. And the Q tool, or the Q key, is the selection tool. Pretty neat, huh? Okay. One small thing, or actually it's not a small thing, it's a very large thing. But I'm going to just talk about it, and then I'll let you guys do your lab assignment real fast, and then we'll talk about some modeling stuff here in a minute. Okay? So, rendering. Okay? So for your lab assignment today, which you guys are going to bang out in probably 15 or 20 minutes in class, okay? It's that shape sorter that you've seen before, especially if you've taken GCOM 402, okay? And we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to move all those parts and pieces, and then we're going to take a picture. But rendering inside of Maya is very different. It's probably the biggest different than rendering over inside of Modo.
I couldn't even get home to work.
Yeah, okay.
I can't figure out how to render.
So we're going to be doing all of our rendering in a plugin in a rendering engine called Arnold. Okay, and Arnold is fantastic. It's a great rendering engine. The thing that you didn't really see inside of the Modoverse were third-party rendering engines. It's one of the reasons why Maya is so popular, is that you get to pick and choose the rendering engine that you want. Maya has a whole series of fantastic developers that are pushing the boundaries of rendering technology for the app itself, one being Pixar with their Renderman rendering service. It's pretty phenomenal. Pixar uses one app to render all of their feature film frames, and it's called Renderman, and it's a plugin for Maya, believe it or not. Okay, so we get to change our rendering engine. We're going to be using Arnold, which comes with Maya. Maya comes with its own rendering engine that's garbage. It really is. It's called the Maya Software Rendering Engine, and I mean it's garbage. It is like 1992 technology. I'm convinced that the powers that be at Autodesk said, why are we going to invest in developing our own rendering engine when these guys down the street have made a plugin that's 10 times better than anything that we can ever do? We'll just kind of point everyone towards them, right? For a long time, the default rendering engine inside of Maya was called Mental Ray, and it was created by NVIDIA, the guys and gals that create the graphics cards. And it was good. It was really, really good. And then NVIDIA basically said, hey, we're getting out of the Mental Ray game. We're not going to be investing or supporting Mental Ray anymore, so we're going to end of life it. And they did. They EOL'd Mental Ray. And at that time, Autodesk said, well, we had to find another partner. And they chose a company called Solid Angle, which creates Arnold. And it's a big-time rendering engine. It's been used all over the world for a lot of different things. I bring this to your attention because we get to switch our rendering engine, okay? And for some folks, they actually see the Arnold stuff up here, okay? Excuse me. All right, so let's do it real fast. These are a portion of our rendering tools, a portion, up here at the top toolbar, okay? Right up here. And this button will actually render your frame. Okay, this one. Let's hit it real fast. All right, and there it is. Maya Software did a great job. It just took a picture of my viewport and took the composition of my view of my three-dimensional scene, and it just rendered it. Boop. Okay. Maya Software is a steaming pile of garbage. It's not good. It's not physically based. It doesn't have a lot of the bells and whistles that we're used to and accustomed to seeing in a modern rendering engine. So we want to walk away from the Maya Software rendering engine to Arnold.
So if we don't have that option on a drop.
We're gonna come back to it. Just hang tight. Okay. Now, inside the render window, this button right here is what fires off a render. So I'm going to render it again. And it's black. What? Does anyone know why it's black? Lights. Okay, yeah. There's no lights inside of our scene, okay? and we have to go in and add them. That's one of the things that the Foundry did a great job of. They always gave us a great camera and a great light and a great environment kind of right out of the box.
You gotta add our own lights.
Yeah, of course we do. Oh, it's one click, Levi. I think we can do it, right? I think we can do it, right? So let's go in and add a light, and not just any light. We're actually going to add a whole series of Arnold lights, because this rendering engine requires us to have some camera and light technology that's linked to its understanding of its rendering technology. Okay, so in the Arnold shelf, okay, if yours isn't there, just hang tight. We're going to come back and talk about this here in a second. In the Arnold shelf, these are all the Arnold lights. Okay. Excuse me, and I'm just going to create an area light. And I know that in all honesty, the normal lights, these are the normal rendering lights. These work, but you get a much better result, in my opinion, if you use the Arnold lights. Let's just add a light in. There it is. It's just chilling down there at my origin. I'm going to fire off the Move tool, and I'm going to start moving it into position. Okay. Rotate it down. Shoot, I'll even make it a little bit bigger. And now, once again, which of these buttons up in here fires off a render? You got it. The slate, okay, not the eyeball. This just opens the render view. But this button here, the slate, actually makes a picture, okay? And now, there it is. Well, you can't see it on your screen very well, but on my screen, I can actually see portions of my teapot. So we need to make our light a whole lot brighter, okay? Now, the third thing that we need to talk about when it comes to big differences, and I'm going to open up my outliner. Oops.
So I can't even see my teapot with the light.
Yeah, it's so dark, it's not gonna work. Let me open up my outliner. The outliner is our item list. It allows us to select any object that we want that's currently active in our scene, and sometimes it's the easiest way to quickly go in and select something. So I'm going to bring my outliner up, and here it is. It's on, for me, it popped in on the right-hand side. I'm just going to grab my area light. Now, with it selected, you can also select it in the viewport. What's the keyboard shortcut to go into object selection state? Anyone remember? F8. So with F8 enabled, I can select it there as well. Okay. So in Modo, whenever we selected an item and we wanted to change the parameters or properties of that item, where would we go? Does anyone remember? The Properties tab, and it lived below the item list inside of Modo. Here inside of Maya, we don't have a Properties tab. We have what's called the Attribute Editor. It is fundamentally the exact same thing. So I got my light selected, and here's one of the attributes, intensity. I'm just going to crank it up a lot. Let's put it to 5. Fire off another render. There it is.
So what did you put the 5?
Say again?
What did you put the 5?
The intensity. The intensity. I put it to 5, and I think I'm even going to crank this. Let's put it to like 15. Render again. There we go. And now we're getting there. Okay.
I'm not. My screen is still black.
Still black. Now, did you?
My light's tilted in.
Okay.
I mean,
What?
it's not at the teapot. It's on another thing, but
What is the intensity value of your light?
15.
15. Put it to 50. See what happens.
How do you get the editor,
The attribute editor. Okay. So I'm in a couple things. I'm in the modeling standard workspace. Okay. In this workspace, it's docked next to my modeling toolkit. If it's not on yours, okay, these buttons up here bring to the surface some global menus that we're going to be going in and out of. The hammer, modeling toolkit. The second one, we're not going to be using this in here. This is the human IK engine, so just kind of ignore that one. The third one, this is the attribute editor, okay, and that will open it inside of the tab on your right-hand side. All right. So rendering inside of Maya requires a little bit more setup. We have to ensure that we're selecting the correct rendering engine, which for us is going to be Arnold. And we got to make sure that we have lights in our scene. All things that were kind of magically taken care of for us coming from Modo. Now, the question that we had earlier is, what if I don't have Arnold? Okay? What if all of this stuff is not showing up? Okay? Arnold is a plugin. One of the things that we're going to be battling on every computer in here is that sometimes, and I have no method of understanding, sometimes these plugins get disabled. Okay? And I honestly don't know why. I've seen it more times than I'd like. Sometimes they just get disabled. So let's return to our plugin manager. Oops, sorry. There it is. So at the top of the screen, I'll see if I can navigate this a little bit better. There we go. All right, so at the top of the screen, under the Windows pull-down menu, Settings and Preferences, Plugin Manager. Okay? This is where you need to go if Arnold is not available to you. Okay? And this is often the first, if Maya is just like, where's the OBJ export properties, right? If like something is completely missing from Maya, I often go to the plugin manager first and do a good double check. Because sometimes I've had this happen on my own personal installs. This happened for me about a month ago where I was trying to export out an FBX from Maya to send over into Substance Painter. And like all of a sudden, the file format was just not showing up on the list of things, and I went, WTF, why can't I export FBXs anymore, right? And for some reason, the FBX plugin was disabled, okay? This is a pretty scary list, okay? If you just scroll down it, these are all the plugins that Maya currently is managing. Let that sink in for a second. These are all the plugins, okay? For example, here's RenderMan for Maya that we're trying to get working still, okay? Here's my suggestion. Oftentimes I don't know. Sometimes the developers don't name their plugins correctly, or they name them according to a convention that I just don't know. There's a search at the top. Arnold. Let's see. Nope. Oh, I hope it's not called something else. Maybe capital A. I personally have never had Arnold turn off. So let's see. I know that the developer of Arnold is Solid Angle. Oh, really? Could be render setup. All right, it's at this point where you have to start kind of doing some searching. I'll work with Taylor during the break to get us up and going and make sure that Arnold is working.
I just basically, since I couldn't find anything, I just had it auto-load everything.
Mm-hmm. And did it pop in?
Reopen the scenes. The Arnold stuff is there, but it still doesn't work. I get the same driver error.
Okay. That's interesting. We will figure that out. We will figure that out.
There's no attribute
Okay.
drivers.
All right. Like I said, this is the shakedown semester. It's going to take us a while to iron out all the kinks, so we'll figure that out, and maybe during the break, Taylor, and keep going. If you find that a plugin isn't loaded, okay, what you need to do is that you need to do. I always turn loaded on and auto load, and then restart Maya. That way, it's going to automatically load the plugin upon initialization and give you the functionality of that plugin in that instance of Maya. Okay. All right. So here's what I want you to do. If you return to, and you're going to get some class time to work on this, okay? If you return to the lab assignment, the shape sorter assignment is a pretty easy one. I've given you a really fun puzzle. Here's the project file in the middle in the resources section. Let's open it up. All right. So here's the puzzle, is to take all the pieces on the right and put them inside the shape sorter on the left, okay? Move, rotate, and scale all the yellow things into the blue things. Yes, sir?
Are you going to notice if we use from the previous semester?
Yeah, it's not going to work. Yeah, because I'm asking you, when you're done, to submit both your Maya project file and a render, okay? So how do we create a Maya project file? It's easy as just file save, right? File save scene. That's going to create a .mb. Yes, ma'am.
For a project file, you get a file, it's a project window, and then you do a new project.
We're going to get to that. We don't have to do that, but we're going to get to that. Yeah.
Okay, I got a solution for the Arnold thing. You have to, for some reason, something in the scene is changed, and basically I exported everything that I had done in the shape thing, imported that into a new scene.
Yep.
And now at least it works without getting
Okay.
an error.
Jump out of here.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and it's working now. Great.
That's
Cool.
The lighting, I'll adjust.
Yeah. You got to crank the lights. Make sure you have an Arnold light in there too, and that's going to work. Okay. Yeah, so if you go to the Arnold shelf, yeah.
It usually works the best with
Okie dokie. So this week for your homework, we're going to be making a wine barrel. Okay. So there's a couple things in this project that I want to just kind of talk about real fast that allows us to start editing simple shapes into more complex shapes. Because we started talking about how to select things and move them around, but we haven't talked about and explored how to edit a simple shape, how to do simple extrusions and simple slicings, and really take advantage of the really great tools inside the modeling toolkit. So our goal this week for our homework is just to create a simple ground scene, a ground plane, like a little environment, and then the model of a wine barrel. Don't worry about the textures. We're just going to do the modeling side of it. Okay? And there's two things that I really want to focus on for a couple seconds that's going to help you facilitate and create your wine barrel. First and foremost, I've given you guys some reference photographs. Let me just download them or go check it out real fast. All right, so I've given you guys some reference photographs that you could use for your project file. Now, I'm an old school 3D modeler. I fundamentally believe that if you're not using reference, you're doing this wrong, okay? The challenge inside of Maya is how do we use reference photographs like these as backdrop objects inside the viewport like we have been over inside of Modo. It's very, very easy to do that. And in all honesty, it's still very easy to do that here in Maya, but they're called something different. Once again, we have to kind of learn a new set of vocab. In Modo, they were called backdrop items. In Maya, they're called image planes. Okay? And creating an image plane and then loading it with a photograph is really easy. Let me show you how to do it because I want to be able to use this photograph as the background of my scene so I can model my little three-dimensional wine barrel to the photograph, right? Kind of like a glorified tracing guide, if you will. Let's jump back over into Maya. And we now have to pay really close attention to which viewport we're going to be loading this image plane into. And the badges at the bottom of our 3D viewport are going to help us out. This is why they're there. Okay? If you look very carefully at the bottom of your 3D viewport, mine says persp. What's this mean? Perspective, right? Now I want to load that image of my wine barrel into an orthographic view, like the front view or maybe even the side view. I don't want to load it into the perspective view. So I need to, the easiest way to do this is to activate one of those orthographic views in the viewport itself. And there's a couple different ways that we can do this. You know, we were exploring the space bar earlier on changing views. This button is a fast way to do it, which is probably the fastest way. Okay? Get into your quad view. So again, the badges at the bottom of the viewport will help you. This is the top, this is the front, and this is the side. Okay? I'm going to go into my front viewport, and just to make it really easy for us to see, I'm going to click in the front viewport and then hit a key to maximize that view. What key maximizes that viewport? Spacebar. Okay? So I tap the spacebar and boom, now that front viewport is filling my screen, which makes it a little bit easier for me to work with. Okay? To load in an image into this viewport, we're going to go to the pull-down menus at the tops of the viewport, all of these guys over in here. And underneath the View pull-down menu, the command we're looking for is at the bottom. Image plane. Okay? And specifically import image. And you can even import movie files, image sequences into the background of your viewports if you'd like. If you're doing big effects work and you want to make sure that everything's lined up and what have you, it's pretty neat. So let's import an image. I'm going to go find my wine barrel that I'm going to use. I'm going to do the second one, that guy. There it is, just chilling in my three-dimensional scene. So the command that we're looking for is under the View pull-down menu, Image Plane, Import Image. Okay. All right. I'm going to tap the spacebar to go back into my quad view, and you can see that in my perspective view, life is good, right? Also, in my top, this little small green line represents the image plane, as it does over here in the side view. So we've loaded in the image, and now I can start modeling to it. With my image plane selected, the attribute editor is going to expose all the attributes of that selected object. So if I wanted to, I can change a couple things. I can say, hey, only show this image plane in the front view. Okay? And now that green line on the top and the side is gone, and I can only see that image plane in the front, which is kind of nice. I can filter which views this image plane shows up in. I'll put all views back on. You can also change, a couple things. So if you mess up, okay, and you pick the wrong image, this thing right here, this is where we go to redirect the image plane to a different image. Clicking on the folder icon will pop over that image browser that we saw before. Okay. All right, so I'm pretty happy with this. This is looking pretty good. Now we have an image in here that we can use to work against. This is going to be a non-rendered object. Okay, so if I was just to simply render this view again, yoink. So image planes, like backdrop items over in Modo, are not going to be rendered. So they're perfect little modeling guides for us as we construct our imagery. All right, so let's go in and start building our model. Okay, I want to work inside the perspective view, and I'm simply going to begin with a simple shape. Okay, now, there's a couple ways that we can go about doing this. Okay, we can always just start with a cylinder, which is kind of cool. We can also start with a disk. Okay, let's start with a disk because this will allow us to explore some things in here. Actually, I'm going to take that back. I'm going to hit undo. Let's get rid of that. I'm going to start with a cylinder. I forgot that the disk has a crazy quad view system at the top. There's our cylinder. Okay, now our cylinder needs to be changed. It needs to be edited. Okay. If you look very, very carefully, there's really not a whole lot of resolution at the top of my cylinder, right? It's still pretty faceted. That looks like a 20-sided cylinder. There's not a lot of geometry in there. And maybe I want it to be like a 30-sided cylinder or a 40-sided cylinder to remove any sort of visual faceted edge from the model at all. I need to fundamentally change how this object is created. And luckily for us, Maya has probably the biggest difference in comparison to Modo. It's called object history. Think of object history as a whole series of channels and attributes that are exposed to us as the artist at any time. Okay? They allow us to go in and make fundamental changes to our model many times, after we've created it. Think of it like accessing your undo queue permanently. Okay? Let me show you what this looks like. It's pretty neat. I got my object selected, and where we need to go to get access to our object history is this last button in this top row. This is called the channel box. Okay? There it is. There's the channel box. You can actually dock it if you'd like. I think you can put it over here, but I'll leave it in this floating window. Oop, for the time being. Oh, I'm going to crash. Of course, it's going to crash. Wah, wah. Anyways, maybe we'll get lucky. Before Maya crashes, see this input here? This says polycylinder 1. That's the little command, if you will, the little piece of programming code that physically creates the geometry. And we get to access that input and then change the parameters that create the polygon. So if I wanted to have a 6-sided cylinder or an 8-sided cylinder, I can go into that input node and make those changes, which is pretty neat. And those are exposed throughout the entire modeling session. So if I'm on like step 22 and I go, man, I really needed to have a 20-sided cylinder versus an 8-sided cylinder, I can go back to that node, make the change, and my model will update.
Is there a point at which you edit the model too much and you can't go back?
Yes, absolutely. And there's times when we need to delete our history because sometimes the computer misinterprets the history and it'll create errors for us on specific modeling sequences. So the answer is yes, we'll have to edit the history, delete the history, change the history. We can even turn the history off if we'd like to. But this is probably the biggest difference between Modo and Maya is this object history. There's kind of access to all the root parameters that generate the geometry in our scene. All right, so let's say I don't want to send a crash report. Just crash. There we go. I bet you guys thought that Maya was going to be crashless, right? No. It's just as crashy. Is that a word, crashy? I just made it a word. It's not a word. Crashy is not a word. It's just as crashy as Modo was. All right. I don't want the crash log. Let's give it a second to load. There it goes. All right, let's try this again. Let's load in the image plane real fast. There we go. All right. FYI, inside of Review Port is a great way to turn off your grid. This little button right here. Bloop, the grid turns off. I turn it off a lot. I don't like having the grid in there. Let's put my cylinder back in. Okay. And with my channel box exposed, this is what I was talking about. Here's that input node, and simply, don't crash on me. Maybe it's the image.
Oh, snap.
Mine's not crashing with the image.
It's his computer.
Oh, it is, right, sure.
And no likey.
We might have something, we might have a that you don't
Yeah.
know.
You know, we just got to be patient. Like Marie says on that show, you just got to give it some love.
You love that show.
You just got to, I love that show. It's changed my life. I like fold my clothes now, which, well, in all honesty, I always folded my clothes, but now I do it differently. All right, I'm not going to, huh?
That was it, the KonMari method, I think was what she called it.
Yeah. I just love the whole idea of giving it some love, saying thank you, appreciating the objects in our house. Okay. So I'm not going to put that image in there with the idea that maybe it's that backdrop image. Nope. It's going to crash again. Maybe there's something. Okay. It's the input nodes. See, Autodesk is conspiring against me. It doesn't want me to talk about the awesomeness of object history. So just trust me that it's there. Okay. I'm going to move on because we're running out of time.
Delete it though, because if not, it'll get super slow.
Yeah, you have to delete your object history from time to time. We'll talk about those conditions as we get a little bit more experience working inside of Maya. One thing that I want to show you are the editing tools, because we're going to want to go in and start to change these shapes. Okay, and I'm nervous to do a cylinder, but I'll do another cylinder. Why not? Because I'm feeling lucky. Okay, let's go into the modeling toolbox, and I'm going to start selecting some edges here. Okay. All right, so we have some tools that we're going to need to use to build our little wine barrel. And again, today's conversation is all about changing our vocabulary list. Okay. In Modo, we had the bevel tool, and it was our super tool. It did pretty much everything for us, right? It was one of our primary constructor tools. But in here, we have a bevel tool, but it doesn't work the way the bevel tool works over inside of Modo. Okay. It works very, 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 very different. So I'm in the modeling toolkit, and these are all the power tools inside of Maya. We're going to be going to these quite often. And check it out, we're going to be using the extrude tool. Okay? So the extrude tool really is the tool that allows us to do something that we're used to seeing over inside of Modo, right? Pulling up, okay, we'll create a new row of polygons. Of course, we can also do that, which is cool. We can non-uniformly scale those polygons. It's the local offset Z, and then offset will scale them uniformly. Okay, so this is the inset that we had inside of Modo, and then this is the shift of the bevel tool that we had inside of Modo. Okay, so it's the extrude tool here in Maya that works like the bevel tool did over inside of Modo. Okay. In addition, we can use the exact same workflow. I just hit the Q key to drop the tool, okay? And let's fire off the extrude command one more time. So I'm going to do a little local, let's do offset first to make it smaller, okay? Hit the Q key to drop the tool, extrude, and we'll do something like that, okay? Much like we had over in Modo, it's nice to have a keyboard shortcut that allows us to repeat a command over and over and over again, because I just did 3 extrusions. It would have been nice to be able to refire the extrude tool without having to hit the Q key, click on the extrude button, work with the tool, hit the Q key, hit the extrude button, work with the tool, kind of like how we had over in Modo, right? For us, inside of the Autodesk workflow, I want to turn my camera-based selection on. There we go, just grabbing that top ring. Okay, so I want to check this out. It's the G key. G is in golf. Okay. Fire off the extrusion. I'm going to do an offset, and oops, excuse me, hit undo. I'm holding down the control key to do little changes. Now, if I hit the G key, G is in golf, it reactivates the tool. Okay. And now I can do local offset, G key, offset to shrink it in, G key. See where I'm going with this? We're reapplying the tool over and over again. This is very similar to that shift-click structure that we had in Modo. Okay? Very similar. Okay? Q key to drop the tool. Now the bevel tool inside of Maya, go into edges. Okay? I'm going to double click on an edge loop, see how it selects the rest for me. Okay? The bevel tool is fundamentally just going to bevel edges. Okay? At segment of 1, we get chamfer. The depth, excuse me, let's do segment of 2. There we go. And fraction is the radius size. Okay? So segments increases the quality of the radius, and the fraction determines the depth of that radius. Okay? So that's the bevel tool. Now the other tool that you're probably going to want to use often, and something that we're used to doing inside of Modo, is slicing. And Maya actually has a really great slice tool. It's called a multi-cut tool. It's one that you're going to use pretty frequently. It's down here at the bottom. Okay. It's a fast, easy way of going in and slicing from vert to vert. Okay. Now if I was to hit the right mouse button, I can keep going with it. Or I can just hit the G key and keep going. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It is right mouse button again. Okay? And I can continue slicing up my mesh like that. Here's another great keyboard shortcut. When you're using multi-slice, hold down, or multi-cut, if you hold down the control key, I can very quickly slice it, do a loop slice. Okay? Can put in rows just like we did with a loop slice tool over inside of Modo. Okay? At any time inside of working with the modeling toolkit, you're confused as to what the keyboard shortcuts are, or if you want to see the full extension of what this tool does, get out of here. Tool tip. There we go. All right. There is, excuse me, some multi-cut options. There are really great, on every tool, keyboard and mouse shortcuts down here at the bottom. It's kind of buried, but now you can see all the different keyboard shortcuts for this one tool. Okay? And many of these tools have a lot of keyboard modifiers and shortcuts that extend the power of the tool. So point being, just go down and look at the keyboard shortcuts. You're going to find that these tools have a lot of powerful functionality built into them, but sometimes their features are hidden under a keyboard modifier. Yeah, just hold down the control key. Control key. Control right here. Control left mouse button, insert, and then control middle mouse button is going to put an edge loop in the middle of the selected row. It's pretty great. And then with multi-cut, the part that I like to recommend that people remember is just if you hit the right mouse button, it kind of restarts the tool. So I can make a slice. I'm slicing UVs right now, but right mouse button, see it's a new slice. Right mouse button again, hold down the control key, new slice, right mouse button, and I'm on my way. So there's really a couple power tools that you're going to use for this week's modeling assignment. The extrude tool, the bevel tool, and multi-cut. I encourage you to continue to explore all the other modeling tools inside of Maya. There are a bunch, but those are the biggies. Okay? Those are the big ones that you're going to be going to all the time. I kind of think the modeling toolkit these are like the rock star tools, the ones that we're going to be going to over and over and over again. Okay? Let's see. Oh, a couple selection things. You can select rows. Like one of the things that I just kind of miss is hitting the L key and selecting a loop of polygons. You can do that inside of Maya, but I don't know, there may be a button up here. I just don't know where it is. But if you go into the select, let's see, where is it? I always have to hunt for it. It's in here somewhere where you can select the entire loop. Point being, they have an entire select menu. Let's see. It's in here somewhere. Convert selection. Maybe it's under modify. But you can select things by loops. And I'm having a brain fart at the end of the day. Yeah, it's in here. Trust me, it is. I just can't remember off the top of my head where it is. But go in, start getting to work. You know, start extruding stuff out. Explore how all this stuff works. You can create some pretty convincing things pretty quickly. Explore the tool set. You're going to find that it's pretty neat. Okay, so you're making a wine barrel this week for your homework. When you're done, you're going to be doing two things for your homework. Obviously you're going to be making the geometry of a wine barrel. It can look like anything you want. It really doesn't matter to me, but it just needs to look like a wine barrel. You're more than welcome and encouraged to use the reference images that I've gave to you. However, they may be broken, which is why I was getting those consistent crashes. I'll investigate that here in a minute. They wouldn't open for you. Okay, so maybe there's some issues with those imagery that I need to fix. I believe they're just PNGs, so maybe it's the transparency in the PNG file that Maya doesn't like. It worked okay for you. That makes me scratch my head. So make your wine barrel just look like a wine barrel. You know, I'm not looking for anything other than just something that looks like a wine barrel. Give it a good ground plane. A simple little scene goes a long way. Okay, having a ground shadow and some additional environmental information like a wall or maybe a ground plane for our little wine barrel to live in will help. And then make a render. And then make a render. Submit both your Maya project file and your render to the Dropbox when you're finished. Questions?
Try to figure out how to throw textures on it?
If you'd like. We're not going to go over that today because I don't want to overwhelm people, but I say go for it, man, for sure. Ms. Stanley and then Emma.
You might have some old videos from university that were basically like your live stream, so that my teacher didn't live stream, but he just saved, and I may have them on a flash drive somewhere. And if I find them, I'll bring them next week for whoever wants them.
Here's the other, on that point, here's the other really great benefit of being a participant of the Autodesk community. YouTube is an encyclopedia of Maya stuff, okay? It is the never-ending resource for Maya. It's amazing how much stuff is out there and how easy it is to find answers to simple questions, okay? So use that going forward. I also have some learning resources that I'm going to start dropping on you guys to help you navigate these uncharted waters, in addition to the live streams. Yeah, Carlos.
Wondering about rendering lighting. I've been trying to figure out how to do the lighting, but it doesn't come up in rendering.
Okay, I'll help you. Give me 2 seconds and I'll give you a hand. Emma. Okay, let me stop the live stream and then I'll help you guys out.